Okay, I can tell time. And I know that this is early, but we're doing Daily Distinction just a little bit early today, an hour early, in fact, because I have a commitment that is coming up at 12:30 here in Las Vegas. So I've got to take off a little early today. So I thought I'd jump on here an hour early to make certain that rather than just do like a 2-minute Daily Distinction, I thought we'd come on that way. That way the folks that normally watch can still see the replay. So how's everybody doing today? I hope you're having a great Wednesday. I am still in shock that it is September. How about you? It's just crazy. On one hand, this has been, you know, as a lot of folks have posted, it's the year from hell. On the other hand, it has moved pretty quickly. I can't believe I haven't been on the road since March. It's just unbelievable to me. I've got to talk Tammy into doing something. I don't know, maybe just going for a drive. We've been out and about a little bit here in Vegas, but I have not left. I've not left town. I have not been more than 10 miles from home since March. And maybe some of you are in the same situation. So how's everybody doing? I hope you're doing great. Yes, Janice, I agree. It is absolutely crazy. It's September. I just can't imagine. And like we were saying yesterday, think of all the things that we've got coming up between now and the end of the year with the presidential election. What's going to happen with football? What's going to happen with school? What's going to happen with a vaccine coming out? I mean, so many things that are up in the air. It's just absolutely crazy. So glad you're here. Thanks for joining me on the early version of Daily Distinction. And before we get started, again, just a reminder that enrollment is open for the Distinction Summit. Stand out, earn more. It's going to be coming up October 16th to the 18th. We're going to be talking about the things that you can and need to do to stand out and earn more in what is certainly a challenging economy and a hyper-competitive economy. And so part of what happens at the Distinction Summit is that we are going to be looking at what you do to stand out and earn more. But because there's so much ground to cover there, we're not really going to have the time or the chance to get into what pulls you back to the pack like a magnet. So what I'm going to be doing between now and October, and that sounds so far away, it's 5 weeks, right? I mean, it's not far at all. So what we're going to be doing between now and October is talking about the things that pull you back to the pack. And so to do that, I'm scheduling 3 webinars. The first webinar is coming up on Tuesday, a week from yesterday. Okay, it's coming up on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 o'clock Pacific. And we're going to be taking a look at what holds you back, what keeps you there. So, you know, what's the old saying? I mean, it's been attributed to Einstein mostly, is that you cannot solve a problem that you haven't identified. And so we're going to be helping you identify what the problems are before we get to the Distinction Summit. So to register for that virtual event, and if you take a look, it's been posted, but to register for the virtual event, it's absolutely free. It'll be a 45-minute virtual event. Used to call them webinars, but part of what you read now is don't call them webinars because webinars sound boring, and I don't want this to be a boring thing. So it's a virtual event now. But there's the link for it. I posted it just now on my business page, the iconic page, on the Daily Distinction page. I posted on YouTube. I posted on Twitter. I have not posted it yet. Oh, yes, I guess I have. I posted earlier on my personal page if you follow me there on Facebook. So all you got to do is click on that and register. It's absolutely free. Would love to see you on Tuesday. We're going to be focusing on what destroys distinction. We're going to talk about that for just a little bit. This is going to be kind of an abbreviated version of Daily Distinction, but we'll talk about that as well today. Pam, yes, the old adage, see you in September. Well, if it's not somebody you're living with, you may not be seeing them. I can't believe I actually have a luncheon, a business luncheon to go to today. So be wearing the mask and doing all that kind of stuff. But actually, it's my first, I take it back. It's my second business luncheon since March. Is that crazy? Just crazy. It's unbelievable what's going on. So let's take a look at one of the things that challenges us. In the very, very, very first book I did, it wasn't even a business book. It's a book that I wrote with my co-author, Tony Boyle. And the title of the book was Just Say Yes. And I talked about in that book how so much of what we heard as kids was negative. I do this every year at Pepperdine. This has been the first year in about 25 years that I haven't spoken at Pepperdine University for a program that they do for high school students between their junior and senior year. And the way I've always started that speech, which is always the same every year because as the old adage goes, it's easier to find a new audience than write a new speech. It turns over every year. Okay, so one of the things I do every year is I say to them, tell me what your parents told you. What are some of the rules? What's some of the things your parents told you when you were growing up? And it hasn't changed in all those years. You know, don't run through the house with scissors in your hand. Don't cross your eyes like that, they'll stick. Don't cross the street without looking both ways. The one that always comes up. Don't leave the house without clean underwear on. Right? You might be in an accident. So it's fascinating when you hear how much of what we heard as kids was expressed in a negative manner. So then what happens? We want to change from the negative to the positive, and so our parents hold us up. They will hold up examples for us. And we're told at a very early age, do what they do, and you can learn. Now, I'm a big believer in what has been christened as OPE. It's other people's experience. I think learning from the experience of others can truly, truly help us. It can be a shortcut to us getting to where we want to be and learning what we need to learn and all of those things that can move us to where we want to be. However, there's a fine line in there. And the fine line is between us learning and copying. There's a fine line between learning from other people and imitating other people. And therein creates some challenges. I've mentioned here several times my mentor was a guy named Grady Nutt. N-U-T-T. If you aren't familiar with Grady, and today most aren't, take a minute and look him up online. Google Grady Nutt. Grady was known as the Prime Minister of Humor. And that was kind of a wordplay because Grady had been a Southern Baptist minister, had a small church in Kentucky, worked at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary for many years. And he left that to be a humorist. Grady for many years was a regular on Hee Haw, but that was always so interesting to me because he was not like what you picture Hee Haw. If you remember that show, he was one of the most perceptive and intelligent people I've ever known. Well, anyway, Grady was someone I admired so much. I wanted to be him. He had the career I wanted. More importantly, he had the talent that I desired. He had incredible speech material. And so I started imitating him. Basically, I didn't realize I was doing it. It wasn't, you know, a choice that I was going to steal his material or I was going to steal his thunder. Instead, it was based out of just sincere admiration. And he had these great stories that he told, and I saw the response that he got from them. And I was too young and too naive in the business to realize I shouldn't be telling his stories. And part of what I realized is when I told his stories, not only did I diminish myself because they didn't happen to me, I wasn't telling the truth. In a way, they also diminished him. And that was the least of my intentions, to diminish my mentor. But if somebody heard me tell the story and then later went to an event and heard him tell the story, it was like, well, we've heard that before. It's like, you know, we always think that the person we heard it from first is the one that originated it. And that's wrong. That's why comedians are so adamant about not taking their material. Right? One of the worst things that one stand-up comedian could do to another is to steal their material. And I think the same is true. I believe I know the same is true in business. So our parents told us a long time ago that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. right? We flatter someone when we want to imitate them. Instead, imitation is the sincerest form of theft. When we imitate someone, we are basically stealing from them. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't learn from their experience. But what it means is we have to learn from their experience and incorporate it into our own unique way of doing things. So one of the hard questions we have to ask ourselves is, are we learning from other people's experiences, OPE that we talked about? Or are we basically just kind of imitating them? Now, we see that in individuals and professionals. And sadly, we also see it in organizations that do the me too. I mean, we see it in technology all the time. Somebody comes out with an innovation in technology, and you can just bet that every one of their competitors is going to have that same innovation with their next version of that product. And it's almost like it's copycat. It's just mere imitation. And what they're really doing is stealing. One of the things that was talked about a great deal in the early days is that, first with the Japanese, now more particularly with the Chinese, is how much they would purchase innovative products and then just tear them down so they could rebuild them and they could make it on their own and change just enough so they wouldn't get in legal trouble. Of course, in China, there's less concern about intellectual property, but and that's something being debated. That's not being, political about that at all. But it's a form of theft. I think it's really a form of theft. But here's the problem that we often overlook, and that is, if you copy, you're captive. If you copy, you're captive. What do I mean by that? If you're based on imitation, then you can only be as good as those you copy. You can't be better. You're captive to their innovation or lack thereof. So if all you're doing is copying, then you, in fact, are captive of the innovations of others. And what a horrible place to be. Because if all you're doing is imitating them, right? For example, it was amazing to me when I was on the U.S. Naval Academy selection committee for several years. One of the things that really struck me was how so many of the applicants were absolutely identical. And don't get me wrong, they all had great grades. They all participated on the school debate team. They all were in the National Honor Society. Those are all admirable. But it also meant few stood out. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you would have had a 2.0 grade point average instead of a 4.0 grade point average, you weren't even going to be considered. But if you're just like everybody else, you're captive to the masses. And if you copy, you're captive. Now, in business, please don't misunderstand. It doesn't mean that you don't know what the competition is doing. It's important, it's vital, it's critical to know what your competition is doing. You need to be aware of what's happening out there in the hyper-competitive marketplace in which we live. You got to know. You got to know, but you can't be controlled by it. You can't be controlled by it. So what we have to do is to focus on finding our own way. So one of the things I have to ask is, are you being pulled back to the pack unintentionally because you're captive at the innovation of other people in your field? Or you're captive of what other people think? Oh, there you go. And see, Pam, there you go. You were so right, and I so get it, because those are two of the best. And why wouldn't you want to be like the best? But instead, what we need to do is to look at what made them unique, whether it's Fripp with her story and her accent, Connie with the way that she approaches things and her enthusiasm, for those of you that know who those speakers are, And then say, how can I do this in my way, not theirs? I mean, you've heard me tell the story perhaps, but one of the things that Grady Nutt did was to take me to lunch and said, Scott, I appreciate how much you obviously appreciate and admire what I do. But he said, if all you're shooting for is to be the best Grady Nutt you can be, the highest position you can hope for is second place. He said, I have a corner on the Grady Nutt market. However, he said, you can be the best Scott McCain of all. But you have to discover that. Now, part of the challenge in this is if you have sincere humility, sometimes you may think, yeah, but I'd rather be you. This seems like there's more to you than there is to me. I get that. But there can't be more to you until you're willing to invest more in you. If all you're doing is investing yourself in imitation, then you're not truly investing in yourself. Certainly, we want to learn from other people's experiences. Certainly, we want to know what other competitors are doing. But when that rules our decisions, all it does is pull us back to a pack like the magnet that it is and make it so hard to escape, to create distinction, to stand out, to earn more. So part of what we're going to be talking about at the webinar, and I posted again, to register for the event, all you need to do is just to go to that link, sign up. It's absolutely free. It's next Tuesday, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Pacific. All you got to do is add it. We'll get into that in greater detail. I love that line, Darcy. Be yourself. Everybody else is taken. That's great. I love that. And it's so true, right? It's so interesting because I remember this line, Gary Kelly, that I was a national FFA officer with. We each give a retiring address at the end of our FFA term of office as a national FFA officer. And Gary Kelly said, the maxim that says, know thyself is ugly. And that line struck me because he said, what we really should be doing, in essence, is not just to know ourselves, but to grow ourselves. That knowing ourselves should be a never-ending, evolving process because it's not static. We have to continue to grow. And so what we really should focus more on is growing ourselves as we know ourselves. And a lot of us think that, well, to know ourselves, and there's another thing, and I've been mentioning some of the things that the Hannah Corbin is the Peloton teacher that I ride the most with on my Peloton, and she's got a couple great lines. One of the things that she said that really struck me is, your body isn't Amazon Prime. It's not going to show up the way you want it in 2 days, which I thought was good. But the other thing that she keeps talking about is, as you look at the leaderboard, you don't know where somebody is, in the sense that when you're on a Peloton, it'll show by output, it kind of challenges you to push harder and do better because of the leaderboard. But she said one of the bad things about the leaderboard is it might be somebody that's done 1,000 rides when you're on your 5th. And the way that she expresses that is, don't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20. And I love that. I love that. So, oh gosh, yes, Darcy, Dave, I've known for a long time. Dave was on the state officer team that followed mine. One of the great guys of the world, and one of the tallest guys I know. Dave is awesome. I didn't realize that he had been your boss. That's so cool. Dave's awesome. So, yeah, that's what I want to suggest to you, is that learn from others. Understand you might be in chapter 1 and they are in chapter 10. Soak up other people's experiences, but don't be controlled by it. Don't be ruled by it. Because, as I said earlier, if you copy, you're captive. You're captive to their approaches instead of what might work best for you. You're captive to their challenges and their situations, their innovation or lack thereof, and not your own. It seems to me that one of the things that holds us back from creating our own distinction, one of the things that prevents us from standing out and earning more, is our inability. Yeah, you got it, Janice. I'm struggling for that. Yeah, exactly. We need to be distinct. And so many times we think we're not worthy of that, but yeah, we are, right? We know we have unique fingerprints. Retinal scanners scan our eyes because the blood vessel pattern of your eyes are totally unique. Even among identical twins, that blood vessel pattern is unique. So we know that we are unique, yet we are somehow reticent about standing out. But standing out is the only way to earn more. And I say this every time, and I want to really drive this home. Earning more doesn't necessarily, people think, you're talking about finances. No, I mean, you earn more respect, you earn more recognition, you earn more promotions, you earn more of whatever it is that you desire. So it's not just about a cash grab. It's not just about persuading and manipulating so I can get what I want. I don't buy that. I don't think that's good in the long run. But I think that, Jim Rohn said, and you know how much I admire all the things that Jim Rohn said, but Jim Rohn said success is something you attract, not something you pursue. And so to become more successful, become more attractive. Now, not in a physical attractive sense, but that there's something about you that you've become more, so you attract more. So my goal with this is to teach what I've learned in studying this for well over a decade of how you do that. How do you become more attractive in the sense that you can attract the success of whatever that is in the manner that you desire. And you don't become attractive by trying to be somebody else. You have to escape the magnetic pull of imitation. We have to escape that, because unless we're able and willing to escape that, we're not going to stand out. We're not going to earn more. We're not going to create the distinction that we desire. Thanks for joining me early. If you're watching on the replay because you didn't get the message that we're early, I appreciate you watching this. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Hey, just a couple reminders before we go. And that is, you can listen to Distinction Radio on your Amazon device. Just say Alexa, play Distinction Radio. Over 200 of you did that last week, and I truly appreciate that. There are free resources for you at Distinction Nation. But most importantly, I want to tell you about the Distinction Summit. It's the Standout Earn More Distinction Summit, October 16th to 18th. Registration is open, $100 off registration, but it ends Labor Day. So you got to sign up now to get the automatic $100 off of the registration. So I'd really love to see you there at the Distinction Summit. We're going to have some incredible guest speakers, and we're going to have an amazing time at the Distinction Summit, the virtual summit to help you stand out and earn more. All right. Thanks, everybody. I look forward to checking in with you tomorrow at our regular time when we get back together on our next Daily Distinction. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.